one but the top boss will do. That's the message coming in from a parliamentary committee on IT. Headed by BJP MP Anurag Thakur. This committee has given the Twitter CEO, Jack Dorsey, a deadline to appear before it by the 25th of this month. A team of Twitter officials that appeared before the committee today were not entertained. On the face of it, the parliamentary panel wants to meet Twitter officials to safeguard citizens' rights on social media platforms. But the summons to Twitter have come after protests claim that the microblogging site has a right-wing bias and has been shutting down accounts of those who support the current government led by the BJP for ideological reasons. So is the parliamentary panel justified in demanding the Twitter CEO's presence? To speak more on this, I'm joined now by lawyer Vinay Kesari and Raman Chima, who's a policy director at Access Now. Welcome to both of you. Raman, let me start by asking you what you think about this whole fight, in a sense, that's brewing between this parliamentary panel and Twitter.
Sure. No, thank you for that. I think that it's something to be happy that our parliament solutions are trying for corporate directors and others to be accountable and to at least. I think we should have trying to, discussion something that is focused at ensuring people's rights are protected and they're better out. Is it a little bit about potential theatre? The reality is that really all current committees of especially those MPs sit will be actually reconstituted soon.
You know what, Raman, I can't hear you very clearly. 1 minute, Raman, I can't hear you very clearly, so I'm going to try and reconnect you so I get a clearer picture of what you're trying to say. I got just a bit of it, but I'm going to try and get a clearer audio before we go ahead with you. I'm going to turn now to Vinay Kesari and see what you think of what is going on, Vinay. I mean, there are two ways that people are looking at it. One is this whole Twitter has snubbed, India, and how can Jack Dorsey not come here when we call him, when he appears before the Senate in the United States and in other countries, etc. The other point of view is that really, is it Twitter's problem if certain people are getting banned because of their offensive content?
I think there are a couple of different issues here. Firstly, to begin with, and this is purely my personal view, I think the standing committee summoning an individual, and I use the word summon here very specifically, the committee summoning someone, in particular the CEO of a company, to come testify before them, seems to me a little unusual. The way I understand it, the way a standing committee such as this one, department-related standing committee, as it is called, the way it usually functions is that its job is to essentially act as a check against the executive. It is supposed to be checking up on what the particular ministries it is supposed to deal with, what they are up to, what the officials in that ministry are doing, and so on. They have an additional job, which is to review bills that are placed before it, before they are placed before Parliament to be passed into law. And during all of these processes, they also have the ability to invite experts to come and testify before them, non-government experts and so on. Now, technically speaking, yes, any committee of Parliament has the ability to summon anyone and force them to come testify before them. But ordinarily, a standing committee such as this one would never exercise such a power. It is only a committee whose job is to probe something, a committee who's conducting an investigation of a judicial character. It is usually only a committee such as this that summons non-government people to come before it and force them to testify. So to begin with, it's a bit strange that that the CEO of Twitter has been summoned in the first place. But apart from that, I think there's also a lot of lack of clarity about what exactly this hearing was supposed to be about. There's very little information available. The correspondence between the committee and Twitter is, of course, not public as far as I'm aware. So I don't know exactly what is there. But as far as the general public is concerned, we know very little about why they want to summon the CEO of Twitter and so on. The motivations are a little opaque at this point, and I'm not really sure what interest of democracy is being served by all of this.
Vinay, the question also is, you're right, there is no clarity on why Twitter is being served. The official reason, which Anurag Thakur has put out on his Twitter handle as well, ironically, is to safeguard citizens' rights. But you have to see the sequence of events that we have seen, which started with protests by people outside the Twitter India office saying that those who support the government and have a right-wing ideology are being targeted by Twitter. Their accounts are being shut down. They're not being verified, etc., etc. Then there is this organization that writes a letter to this parliamentary committee complaining about Twitter, and then this summons goes out. So linking that sequence of events, one comes to the conclusion that that is the real grievance, that why are people with a certain ideology being shut down? And then now let's look at it in the context of how social media giants have been very wary after being accused of influencing elections, over time. So do you think that this could be a case of a political position being pushed through this parliamentary panel, and that is why there's so much skepticism about the summons?
See, it's hard for me to comment on exactly what the motivations could be at this point, because again, in the absence of some actual content in terms of what they wish to explore during this hearing and so on, it's pure guesswork as to what the chain of events is that led up to this. What are the possible motivations? To be honest, anything is possible. And going back to a point which perhaps I think Raman was trying to make as well. See, it's a good thing for parliamentary committees to actually try to do their job and to hold the executive accountable and to inquire into issues that actually matter to our democracy. But I think the real question we should all be asking is this really a fit case to exercise these powers?
Exactly.
Powers that might exist on paper.
I've got Raman back, and let me get his point of view as well with a clearer audio, hopefully. Raman, so that's the question, isn't it? Is it a misuse of the powers that a parliamentary committee has? Because we've seen these social media giants being summoned before representatives of the people, elected officials in America as well, where they have to come and explain the powers that their platforms have on political discourse and impacting elections, etc. Do you think there is a justification for the summons that have gone to Twitter?
I think that the reality is there are important issues which could require many of these companies to help provide more evidence and make their positions clear. I do think that there are more important priorities that could have been addressed first. In particular, the concern that you flagged about, for example, citizens' data being potentially misused in an electoral situation, but otherwise more generally also impacting people's privacy and their sense of security and the rights they have over their data. That's in fact an issue that's already been live before this committee for nearly a year. And I've been particularly troubled that so far they've only called representative government on an important issue where other parliaments, in fact, regulators and fora are calling these executives, whether it's from Google, Facebook, other big tech players, but even like domestic tech companies, when that important topic is already live in India and where, in fact, we don't know if this committee is going to come out with a report by the time of the elections. It's somewhat difficult to understand what the problem is. What is the scope of this committee? And remember, this committee comprises of MPs from across different parties. It is chaired, of course, by Mr. Thakur, who is elected from the BJP, but there are many other MPs there. I think we have a question to ask them saying, what are your priorities and why did you decide that this is the most important one for which you wanted to summon Jack Dorsey and others to come? Will you be asking other platforms as well to explain their position? And secondly, what about the existing issues, including the very real reality that over 500,000 Indian citizens' data was involved in the Cambridge Analytica situation? We still don't know what happened. And so far, based on the best of my knowledge, no Facebook representative or Cambridge Analytica representative or other has had to take part in that process. So I'm worried about the prioritization, to be honest here.
You know, the other part of this, Vinay, and I'll come to you on that, is the insistence that it must be the Twitter CEO or very senior officials who come. And the first summons to Twitter was on the 8th of Feb, and you expect them to turn up in 3 days. Which I think is a bit much to ask. But then, yes, a team from Twitter, including officials from Twitter India, did land up in front of the committee today. There were some pictures put out on that as well. And they weren't entertained. It was just not good enough. Do you think that is a bit of an issue?
Absolutely. I think that, again, I'm not sure what the motivations are or what the end game is. But what I will say is that it seems like in the midst of all of this, it is the prestige of Parliament, the Parliament of India, that is suffering for now. Because, see, if we're going to set this up as a battle of wills, if we're saying that the only person who will suffice is the CEO of Twitter, and this is the Parliament of India commanding him to appear, and if at the end of the day he doesn't appear, and it's possible that he may not be legally obliged to appear, that is certainly a possibility. If that is the case, the optics are not going to work out very well for us as a country. I think that's something we need to keep in mind. If this had been couched instead as an invitation for the company to, present its case on a certain issue, and if that issue had been outlined very carefully, and if after hearing them, the committee felt that the company had not taken the issue seriously enough, or had not devoted the resources or the people necessary to deliver the answers required, it may have been perfectly valid for them to say that this is a company that has not discharged its responsibility properly. But in this case, it feels like, we're setting ourselves up to look not very good at the end of the day.
One more question on that, Vinay, about the legal angle. Can the Indian Parliamentary Committee insist that the Twitter CEO appears before them, considering this is an American company? So the context is different here. It's different when, American elected officials call on the Twitter CEO. Can we insist legally, and if he doesn't show up, can we legally take action?
That's a good question, and I don't have a direct answer for that right now. I can certainly say that if you have an Indian citizen and a person resident in India, a parliamentary committee, including this one, certainly has the power to issue a summons and effectively compel that person's appearance. But I don't think the question of what happens if this kind of a summons is issued to a non-citizen, a non-resident non-citizen, what happens in that case? I don't think that question has really been explored anytime in the past, because, as I said, it is quite unusual for a parliamentary committee of this kind to even issue a summons in the first place to a non-government person to come and testify before them. So there isn't too much precedent on what happens when an Indian is summoned. So the question of what happens when a non-Indian is summoned is really something that will have to be explored, I think.
Raman, your thoughts on what we're witnessing right now? It comes, of course, in the backdrop of this huge, politics-driven outpouring of aggression on Twitter India specifically right now. It's a very toxic environment sometimes, and with the elections drawing close, it happens to be even more so. What is the way forward, and do you think that what we're seeing with this parliamentary committee summons is an outcome of that, deep divide that we see online?
So any parliamentary committee summons should not reflect a partisan political position. I'm not sure whether this one truly does. And as I mentioned previously, there are other members on this committee as well. And in fact, you have to take their vote. It's not something that can just be issued by the chairman himself. Normally, the chairman has to at least provide an option for fellow members to speak up. But that's the thing that we should hear. any position from the Indian Parliament, if it's seeking to collect information, if it's seeking to even require people to depose and provide more evidence, should be based on an important fact-based exercise. And I think the challenge here is, given the limited time, given that at least based on what we publicly know, and I'm not sure if there were more private communications on this previously, but given that only the beginning of this month were concerns of something flagged, and this process issued, where in fact, if you go to the committee website, it might have changed recently, but even until just a few days ago, there was no formal notice of inquiry on the subject. It was just an additional element added saying the committee will be studying this issue as well. The problem is we don't know what is the actual issue the committee is seeking to solve right now. I think there is an important issue of harassment, as you mentioned, about transparency of technology platforms. What are they doing? For example, even during the election period, who are they speaking to? What sort of partnerships and exercises do they undertake? These are important things that all companies, not just Twitter, but including Twitter, but several other companies as well need to be transparent about. And I'm worried that right now in the process of targeting one high-profile chief executive, that's not a process they're going into. And really, we need to be able to go into that. And more importantly, leaving aside this particular issue about perhaps particular political targets, let's not forget the very clear objectives MPs set for themselves. Our MPs said we wish to protect people's privacy, we're troubled by accusations of data theft, data breaches, we wish to study that. And even till date, not a single citizen's voice has actually been heard before this committee so far, based on public records. That's what we should be worried about, not whether billionaire CEOs are flying down to listen or provide a hearing, but it's that our MPs are actually listening to their people here in India on what's going on, because ultimately that's who they're elected to represent.
All right, some interesting points coming in there. When and if Jack Dorsey turns up, or senior Twitter officials do turn up on the 25th, it's only fair that we have more details on what exactly is the agenda with Twitter. If it's as limited as why are supporters of this government being unfairly treated in their view, it might put the entire parliamentary panel in poor light. Thank you so much, Vinay Kesri and Raman Chima, for joining me today.